Thank you for being with us today. The floor is all yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Sharif. Thank you, all the AmCham members for inviting me to participate in this General Assembly meeting. Actually, I was privileged to serve the AmCham community by being one of the board members throughout the years 2007-2010. Let me start by saying that we are witnessing unprecedented times. And this COVID-19 crisis is really different than many previous crises that the world has witnessed before. Why is this different? Because for the first time, we have a crisis that affects both supply and demand at the same side. All the global value chains have been affected. Manufacturing activities have been stopped in many countries. A lot of enterprises have decreased wages. We're not talking about the layoffs that have happened. Unemployment have accelerated. And more importantly is that consumer confidence has been influenced negatively to a great extent. The other thing is the geographical aspect of this crisis. It started, of course, in China, and then it spread to all economies worldwide. The crisis did not affect one sector, like when we were talking about the financial crisis before, but because it started, or it's affecting mainly the health, so it led to a lot of shutdown and closing of a lot of other sectors at the same time. What is more important is that this crisis, the global economy was basically suffering from weak conditions and vulnerability before the crisis started. So the global trade was subject to protectionist measures, and this has led to the decrease of the ratio of global trade to GDP, in addition to global trade policy, uncertainty and business confidence is increasing. Let me walk you through some international indicators before discussing the Egyptian case. If we look at the global economy, we will see that the global economy is losing about 5.5, on an estimate, $5.5 trillion. If we compare the loss or the decrease in GDP, if we compare the Great Recession and the financial crisis of the 2008, we will find that the financial crisis of 2008 led to a decrease in economic growth on average by about 4.5%. The Great Recession led to about 5% decrease. We estimate that this COVID-19 will lead to about 7.9, so about 8% decrease in economic growth on average worldwide. I would like also to share some statements that have been some statements from the IMF, from the OECD, and from other institutions that this COVID-19 has disrupted our social and economic order at a speed and a scale that we have not seen in living memory, and this was by the IMF managing director. The OECD also has mentioned that the COVID-19 crisis is severe for all of us, but poor people will be the hardest hit. However, this crisis threatens to reverse existing achievements on the SDGs and to undermine further progress in the decade of action. But what I like, actually, in all challenges, there are opportunities. So what I liked was the statement by Standard & Poor. Standard & Poor said that the COVID-19 pandemic may be the ultimate disruptor, accelerator, economic, technological, and energy transformations. And this is why we will talk at the end about how the new world economic order will be and what are the opportunities and how we can get prepared. Employment losses, major employment losses. We will witness major employment losses. Already a lot of unemployment records due to losses, decrease in income levels, and we are expecting the ILO's statement that will be around 25 to 35 million job losses on average worldwide. Of course, a severe decline in international trade. Also, the World Trade Organization and the UNCTAD actual data is, the UNCTAD is expecting about 30% drop in global trade values, and also the World Trade Organization is expecting between 20 to 32% of disruption in normal economic activity and life worldwide. The impact of COVID-19, definitely there will be an impact on the global foreign direct investment. Lack of containment of the outbreak will definitely lead to an impact on the foreign direct investment between 30 to 40% on the whole world. Two important issues actually we should be take care of is poverty rates. The World Economic Forum has highlighted that the expected sharp increase in poverty rates due to the drop in income levels resulting from the economic recession. Also, the estimates is that there will be an expectation about 500 million people falling in poverty. The other thing is that the liquidity crisis. There will be strong pressure on liquidity worldwide, especially that if we look at the global debt levels across all sectors, there is an increase in the debt levels by about 322% of GDP by the end of 2019, and that's a huge leap of the debt levels to GDP worldwide. Definitely sharp decline in remittances, and this is resulting from loss of jobs, layoffs in different countries, a lot of decrease in wages, and this of course affects more vulnerable groups, and of course represents a loss of financing for many vulnerable households. Not to talk about definitely the vulnerability of the commodity markets. This has direct effects, of course, due to shutdowns and the disruptions to the supply chain, and of course has indirect effects as a global response slows growth and leads to the global recession that we are witnessing. We have witnessed also the great vulnerability of the energy prices during the past few months. If we move to the Egyptian case, definitely the Egyptian case is being affected as all countries of the world is being affected. But let me take you through a few moments on how the Egyptian case was pre the COVID-19 crisis. Due to the successful economic reform program adopted by the Egyptian government in 2016, this has contributed majorly to improving all the economic indicators and enhancing the resilience of the Egyptian economy. The first half of the year, we have achieved 5.6 GDP growth rate. That's July to December. We are expecting to get out the growth rate of the third quarter, January to March. This quarter is we're expecting to reach about 5.5%, coming down from the 5.8% that we were expecting for the third quarter. So it is 5%, it's 0.8% less than what we were aiming. However, it's still positive and a high growth rate. Unemployment rate reached 7.7%. That's from January to March. But we are witnessing April. We have done the estimates for April, and for April there is an increase of about 9% of unemployment for the April, of course, due to the COVID. Average inflation rate from July to March is about 5%. We have witnessed a decrease in the balance of payment deficit, 24% in the period January to March, and of course increase in the FDI from July to December by 20%. These are all very positive indicators pre the COVID-19, and of course this led to the resilience of the economic situation and to the Egyptian economy pre the COVID-19. All international institutions, of course, expect that the Egyptian economy, in light of the emerging of the coronavirus, will be still be achieving positive growth rate, supported by, of course, the medium-term growth prospects that Egypt have witnessed since 2016 till today. And of course, you have seen whether the IMF, whether the World Bank, and Standard & Poor's and the rating agencies, they are all talking about positive growth rates in the Egyptian economy. What have we done? What was the strategy of the Egyptian economy after the post-COVID-19? The strategy of the Egyptian economy, we have taken a proactive strategy, taking all necessary measures to mitigate the negative impact of the crisis on most affected segments of the population. Of course, the decision was to contain the spread of the COVID-19 without causing a full economic lockdown, supporting the economic activity through sector-specific measures, support workers and ensure income stability, and of course monitor the development of the crisis and update our estimates, our forecasts, and of course our policies accordingly. We are having very dynamic meetings. We are having meetings very frequently, so all our policies or our estimates are very dynamic in order to cope with this unprecedented situation. What are our projections for the growth rate for this year? This year we were supposed to reach 5.7% growth rate by the end of the year without pre-COVID-19. Due to this unprecedented crisis, we are expected to end the year by about 4% growth rate. Unemployment rate, as I told you, we were expecting about 7.7 to 8%, and this would always result in absorbing the new entry to the markets, about 750 to 850,000 workers, graduates every year that enter the market, in addition to absorbing part of the backlog in our unemployment rate. However, of course, we are witnessing a 9% increase in unemployment, and maybe it will reach by the end of this year, 2020, 10%. What were the objective of our economic policy? The main objective is we started by allocating a comprehensive plan to deal with the crisis. This comprehensive plan is the full 100 billion Egyptian pounds, and this is almost about 2% of GDP, and that's a very decent figure for dealing with the crisis, according to allocating a comprehensive budget to deal with the crisis. The other measure was related to support sectors. Some sectors have been affected negatively due to a total shutdown, like the tourism sector, like the aviation industry. So these are to deal with these sectors. So there were some measures related to support these sectors. Of course, other policies were related to support economic activity in order to raise purchasing power and boost domestic demand. And as I mentioned, this is the first time we witnessed a shock that affected supply and demand at the same time. So boosting demand is very important. And the fourth measure was basically supporting vulnerable groups. A lot of economic policy measures were taken. We had a policy tracker for all these measures that the government have taken, whether in the health sector, tourism and aviation, in the industrial sector, in the SME sector, the agriculture, all the policies, whether on the monetary side or the fiscal side, to support the recovery of this. And let me share with you some of these measures. Of course, there are on the central bank, on the monetary policy, the central bank have decreased the interest rate by about 300 basis points, announced a 50 billion to fund real estate development for low-income families. For the business sector, we have delayed all payments, all sovereign payments, whether it's taxes, whether it's fees related to municipalities. Banks will postpone all credit entitlements for medium, small, and micro enterprises, in addition to a new debt relief initiative for individuals and risk of default. What are the priorities for the Egyptian government in light of the COVID-19? We have started our new plan for the next year, for 2020. This has been presented to the Parliament. We have reallocated our priorities. Of course, we have increased for the first time the public investment by about 60% increase in public investment. Increased the health sector by 42%, the education sector by about 80%, a major increase to digitalization and telecommunication by 300%, because there is a major opportunity in this sector. What we have invested in the public investment in the past, in the infrastructure in the past few years was about 1.5 trillion Egyptian pounds. So the Egyptian government has implemented a lot of infrastructure projects, and specifically in the digital transformation. A lot of initiatives have been allocated to the health sector to increase intensive care beds by about 77%, increasing also 87% for child care beds, and this was a major concern in our government hospitals, in addition to automation of all the medical records of university hospitals. We have reached 25%, and we are assuming to increase the automation by about 70% next year. We have, of course, due to the new world economic order that we will witness, there are many developments and main priorities for the Egyptian government in light of the COVID-19. There is 2.6 billion investments in the digitalization. Of course, our national strategy is focusing on the green economy, having more cleaner society and more green. And we have made a lot of our projects with an emphasis on the green and the sustainable cities, especially all the new cities that the government are establishing. We are focusing and highlighting the importance of having sustainable cities with rooftops of solar park and energy. Also, what is very important is localization of development. Achieving inclusive and sustainable growth is very important, but having this growth balanced between different governorates is one of the main pillars of our Development Plan 2030, and also one of our main pillars of our yearly plan. So we are working on always to disperse our investments in order to fill the developmental gaps and try to have more localized development on different governorates and different regions. Of course, social protection is one of the major importance now. We have allocated this year an extra 8 billion Egyptian pounds to the project that has His Excellency the President has initiated a year ago on decent life, Hayat Karima. This initiative is basically allocating excess funding to cover more villages, less privileged villages. We are targeting about 500 villages to benefit this coming year from increase in health services, increase in water sanitation, increase in better school and less density of schools, in addition to providing more micro enterprises and of course coordinating between different institutions that provide micro enterprises in order to have targeted projects that are aligned with the competitive edge of each governorate and each region. The other thing is that for the first time we started a gender responsive budget. Women are an important segment of our society, so we are enhancing the role of women, and we have done this gender responsive budget and gender responsive plan in order to make sure that all our plan and all our projects are sensitive to the gender issues. The other thing is enhancing the role of the private sector. And here we have our new first time Egypt's Sovereign Wealth Fund that is main objective is to stimulate private investment in Egypt using its underutilized assets in order to unlock the value and create more value for our future generations. Monetize Egypt's wealth of resources, whether it's nature, its talent, its heritage, and enabling Egypt to become an innovative and agile investor. So this Sovereign Wealth Fund is one of our main vehicles to enhance the role of the private sector in order to inject capital and, of course, use the private sector to provide more private sector enhancement in the Egyptian economy, and that's one of our main targets, and we're working very hard on this respect. We are working hard on establishing different sub-funds, whether in the health sector, in the digital transformation, in transportation, and of course in many of the other projects that are related to the infrastructure and water sanitation. Are we witnessing a new world economic order after the COVID-19? Yes, we will be seeing a different world. We are expecting a world with different features of the global economy. A lot of questions are being raised. What are the major economic powers likely to lead the global economy? what is the potential role of the international institutions? Are countries becoming more nationalistic, more looking inwards and trying to be more self-sufficient? Definitely the issue of food security is one of our main priorities, and I think a lot of countries will be seeking to be more self-sufficient from food. The issue of logistics and it's related to the countries fulfilling all its needs through providing more logistical areas and more updated logistical measures in order to be self-sufficient in all commodities, in all necessities and all necessary commodities. Issue of digitalization, I think there will be acceleration in digitalization and digitalization of services. Will there be a decline in globalization? That's a question that we will witness in the coming month, but I think there will be less reliance on globalization and more self-reliance on local supply chains and regional supply chains, more or less. We need to mobilize more our local savings in addition to encourage more regional and local investments. Trade relations between Western countries, especially with the growing tension between the US and other countries, is definitely a concern. There will be definitely a focus more on the health sector and the importance of the health sector, a major role for the SME sector, especially with the importance of the supply chain and moving the supply chain and to other regions in the world, safety nets, job creation, dealing with the vulnerable groups. I think all countries have to revisit their labor laws and start looking for more inclusive and more safety protection measures and safety nets to mitigate the level of job losses that we witnessing. However, the SME and the microfinance sector will be a good vehicle and a good channel in order for these new people who have lost their jobs to join. In Egypt, we have provided the vulnerable groups with a compensation for 3 months. A lot of people have applied. From this applications, we have a good number of people who have lost their jobs, the vulnerable groups that were working on their own, or people who were working in the informal sector. We have a good database for these people. About 4.4 million people have applied. We have a good database for these people in order to utilize their competitiveness, their skills, by providing them. We'll start after the feast break by providing, segregating these groups, providing training courses for them, linking them with the microfinance enterprises, and of course with different of the NGOs. The other thing is that COVID-19 will definitely affect the SDGs, and of course the world community has to revise all its SDGs and start looking for the priorities, redirecting its priorities towards maybe more emphasis on all issues related to poverty, healthcare, inequality, but we cannot at this stage neglect the SDGs. We have to work hard on achieving our SDGs. especially education. We have about 776 million school children were affected by school closures. So developing applications and platforms to help parents, to help teachers, to help schools make use of distance learning is a necessity. Technology is a growing market with more people consuming education online. And of course, healthcare is at the utmost priority. Finally, I'd like to end by, we have to all remember that nothing is more permanent than the temporary. So let's all get prepared, and let's all be optimistic that this will end soon. However, we have to be all prepared. We have to join hands, the public, the government, the private sector, the NGOs, in order to pass these unprecedented times. Thank you very much.